There you go. Yeah, now I'm streaming. My audio looks like it's working, and my video was lagging a bit, but it looks okay now since I restarted the software. So here I am, and as you see, today's agenda is to talk about some issues in the news related to web literacy and build out our toolkit for working on this project together. So I'll give people a few minutes to come online. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, I have purple fingernails. Well, these two. I don't know. I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I smashed my fingers working on my roof the other day. I was trying to nail the flashing into the chimney because it's been leaking a bit, so I put a bunch of caulk behind the flashing, and then I was nailing it in there, and I was using these masonry nails. And the first 3 or 4 went in fine, but then the last one did not. I just couldn't get it to go into the brick at all. And so I just was hitting it harder and harder and harder, and then with a massive swing, smashed my fingers instead of the nail, and it hurt a lot. Probably didn't break the bone or anything, but it definitely, it definitely hurt. So, and it's not enough to like try to drain the purple part. It's just annoying, and it's still kind of numb, but not as bad as it used to be. It's at the point now where it doesn't hurt that bad, so I forget that it's injured, and then I use it normally, and then it hurts. So like I try to pick something up or poke something, and it hurts. So yeah, just one of those things that you deal with when you're working on your house. I'm keeping an eye on something in the backyard. I have a squirrel. I have a bird feeder, and I have several bird feeders, but there's one in my line of sight where I'm sitting, and I had one up there previously, like for a few months, that was just a regular like house style bird feeder, and it was very popular with the squirrels. And so sometimes if I see them out there, I'll just go yell at them, but ultimately it's a losing battle because I can't watch it all the time. And so we put like a plastic punch bowl over the top of the bird feeder. Like I drilled a hole in the punch bowl and then stuck it on the wire that it was hanging from. So the idea was that the squirrels couldn't get around the side, but of course they could. They figured out how to do it. So I think the punch bowl maybe it wasn't big enough. But anyway, eventually I just gave up on trying to, keep the squirrels out. I just kind of think of it as a squirrel feeder, essentially. Some birds do get some bird seed occasionally, but mostly a squirrel feeder. But then one of my neighbors was giving away some stuff, and he had this bird feeder with like a really big metal circular thing that sits on top of the bird feeder to keep the squirrels off. And I have not seen any squirrels on it yet, but I haven't been paying as much attention to it. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on it today, and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay, we've got 5 viewers, so I think I can get into some content and get started today. So welcome everyone who's here. Oh, there goes a squirrel now. I'm going to see what he or she does. Okay, I think we're doing something else. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about web literacy and building out our toolkit with this project, like figuring out how to do this. And I got a lot of things to talk about actually. So I'll try to keep this brief, but I might go on a bit. I'll try not to. I'm trying to see if the squirrel is going to try to make the jump from the swings to the bird feeder. I don't think it is. Okay, sorry, this is distracting me. Let me switch over to my browser. I have a bunch of stuff that I sent you all in the notes for today, so that's probably a good place to start. The other thing though is keep in mind, you should. Sorry, too many browsers. You should have a topic already figured out for your article that you're going to be writing with your group. And in the announcement I sent today, I shared what those are that I know. And there are 2 groups that are still TBD, still to be determined. That's groups 2 and 3. And you both talked about different ideas. I think group 3, you were basically saying, all of you basically chimed in to say you didn't have any preference. So you need to figure this out today so you can actually start working on it. This project is due Saturday this week. This week's due date is Saturday instead of Friday. So you need, just have a couple of days really to work on this. So you need to get started on it. If you generally don't have a preference and don't express one within the Slack channel, maybe I'll just pick one for you, because if you think they're all equally good, then whatever I pick would be one of those, and so I'll just do that. But again, if you have any preferences, you should express them soon. So make sure you figure that out. As I noted here, and a couple of you were asking about this, you're free to tweak these a bit. Like I've found different versions of these claims, and I tried to express the simplest version of it in the options that I gave you. In some cases, though, you might find there's a better set of research around a particular version of the claim, and you're welcome to tweak it to match whatever you find. I just recommend keep it as simple as possible, or kind of focus on one sub-claim within a larger set, just because that'll be easier to prove or disprove. And so that's something that I can help you figure out if you need to. Like one of these, so if you like group 6, you're looking at the Bill Gates vaccine thing. There are actually a lot of things associated, a lot of conspiracy theories about Bill Gates right now. I mean, there have been for years, but right now there's a lot going on, a lot of theories about the vaccine. I would focus on this specific claim or something like it, this literal claim that I actually saw, that it's going to, the vaccine that Bill Gates is going to enforce, like this is the theory again, Bill Gates is going to mandate a vaccine for humanity so that it can gradually turn us into aliens. So the idea is that there is an alien invasion, and this is it. Like, it's not going to be UFOs landing in Washington, D.C. It's going to be us all gradually being turned into aliens by the introduction of this DNA, which Bill Gates is helping facilitate. So that's something, that's the specific claim here. There's others that are perhaps more plausible, but or don't sound as ridiculous. But again, focusing on the more ridiculous one perhaps might be easier, but also just focusing on it with the specificity of that claim might be a bit more helpful. And Aster the Ace. I mean, I've heard stupider things, but it's one of those things that was stated in a non-satirical context, I think. I think it was not satire, but that's sometimes hard to tell with these things. So, but we want to get to the truth, and we want to figure that out. So anyway, if you have any questions about topics, of course, let me know. But I think most of you are on the right track, and even the two groups that haven't formally declared a topic yet, you're working towards it, and that's fine. That's good. Okay, so let's take a look at the agenda for today. There's actually several stories in the news about fake news, and I'm really interested in that. And it's a good lesson in how relevant this part of the class is, I guess. So let's take a look at a couple of these. I have some thoughts about each. Actually, I have more thoughts about this first one. So let me sort of start here. This one's a bit. You can get pretty in depth with this one. And this first article from the Wall Street Journal is pretty thorough. It's a very thoroughly reported story, and really just even like reading it and taking it all in takes a bit. So I kind of like sometimes looking at another source that will sort of look for the highlights of it. So this is a blog I read, Boing Boing. It's sort of a blend of tech things and random things. And they had, I think, a pretty good high-level summary of some of the takeaways from this reporting, and lots of other places have reported similar takeaways. But basically, Facebook did some internal research and discovered this thing that many people have noticed about Facebook, and essentially confirmed that, our tool does lead people to be more divided. Our platform does tend to, as it says, exploit human brains' attraction to divisiveness. So it's recognizing that this is a trait that we are all kind of drawn to. And their platform in many ways exploits that for its own purposes, or they do as a company exploit that for their own purposes, and basically Facebook decided not to do anything about that. So this is a pretty damning claim. I think it's a pretty shocking claim in some ways, because they're stating that they know that this is the problem, but they've decided not to do anything about it. And I think I have a lot of problems with Facebook, and this is one of them. The other thing that they mentioned, that I mentioned as a similar story, this is from a little while ago now, but they basically, the headline pretty much tells you that they've decided not to do anything about misleading claims in political advertising. So I think they're taking a free speech perspective on this. That if they were to constrain certain kinds of political speech, that's just too much of a slippery slope or too tricky for them to figure that out. But it also, I think, and the other reporting I think confirms this, that it really harms their business model if they are keeping targeted ads out, because their whole claim as a business is that they can sell targeted ads. Like they can really microscopically narrow down to a specific person or a very small group of people's inclinations, and then let advertisers exploit that specificity. I mean, that's Facebook's whole premise. So this is, it's consistent with other decisions that they've made, basically, is what I'm pointing out here. That they are not that interested in being a morally responsible company, basically, is how I take that. But that's me editorializing a bit. Read the stories if you're interested in looking at this. I think it does raise a question about what is their responsibility, or what is any platform's responsibility. And that's what we see going on with the debate now, or I guess it's a debate, but really the story about Twitter and what they've decided to do with Donald Trump's tweets. So they've, and this is the Guardian's summary of it, but it happened. You can just look at Donald Trump's Twitter account if you want to see it, which is that, Twitter has relatively recently decided that they're going to label claims. And so whenever I was looking for coronavirus claims, I saw this a lot, where there would be this little blue thing here you can see in the screenshot of saying, here's the facts about COVID-19, or are you looking for more information about COVID-19? Here's something you should look at. So it provides kind of a summary, like a curated editorial summary of information that they think is actually helpful. And so that's a way to respond to that. It looks like Group 2 is already going ahead with the coronavirus 5G story, which I think is great. So if you want to go ahead and sort of claim that, that's totally fine. These claims here, they're getting labeled. Historically, Twitter has basically thought of Donald Trump and probably other world leader kind of people in a kind of special case. So even if they violate Twitter terms of service or code of conduct, Twitter has declined not to do anything about it. Whereas if you or I tweeted something threatening, if someone reports it to Twitter, they would take that tweet down or suspend our account or something. Twitter has basically said it's in public and historical interest to preserve tweets of the President of the United States, and so they've decided not to do anything about that. But what they've done now is add this bit of context to tweets, and they have chosen not to make an exception for Donald Trump's tweets. In other words, they're treating it like any other potentially misleading tweet, and I think it is really significant. Like, this is a massive shift in Twitter's policy. So I'm really interested to see. I hope they stick to it. I hope that this is something that they don't backtrack. Twitter is. I don't know, in some ways better than Facebook, I suppose, but also just the content and the way people use Twitter is just awful sometimes. So I think between the two, I don't know which is worse, but as a company anyway, they seem to be doing the right thing at this point. And yet they've raised this question now, or Trump has raised this question of First Amendments and free speech. And I've not read his tweets, but I believe he's been saying that Twitter is violating his First Amendment, his right to free speech, which is false. That's not true. The First Amendment guarantees that the government won't enact a constraint on speech or on the press. Twitter is not the government, and they are not responsible to that. Now, they might be socially or culturally or morally responsible to that, but they're not legally held to that the same way that the government is. Trump has threatened to, I think he's even said something like shut down Twitter or take action. Ironically, that would be a violation of the First Amendment. So that's something that is, will play out in interesting ways over the next few days, possibly. And as you see here, there's lots of, these are other stories, but you can see there's other things related to Twitter. I mean, one of the other things going on right now is that on Twitter is that Trump has been spreading a theory that Joe Scarborough murdered someone, which again would be the kind of thing that would violate Twitter policy if anyone else did it. And so the fact that Twitter is choosing not to do anything about that currently is disappointing. But in any case, these are things that are all related to what we're talking about. The way that news platforms well, the way that social media platforms have become news platforms means that they've had to assess their responsibilities, and sometimes they change their policies, sometimes they do it well, and sometimes maybe not. So the other thing I wanted to show you, this is a story I have a bit more perspective on, actually. This is nearly half of accounts tweeting about coronavirus are likely bots. Interestingly, this headline changed, and that's something else that's might be worth looking at. This originally said half of accounts tweeting about reopening America are likely bots, but I think sort of the same issue. I'm not sure why they changed that headline, but maybe it says it updated it, so maybe that was the update. Maybe they just updated to clarify what the researchers were talking about. But they're talking about the researchers here are a group at Carnegie Mellon, and they are a group of data scientists and I think political scientists, and they work together to figure these kinds of things out. And they mentioned that well, there's just some interesting discussion here of what a bot is. But they also note here how this research group is noting that this is really the same problem and the same network and networks that were interfering with and doing things in 2016 during the election. The goal of that seems to be to use different disinformation to just basically get people to argue with each other and sort of spread doubt and anxiety. So it wasn't really about getting a specific person elected as so much as just getting people divided and angry. And that definitely succeeded. If that was their goal, it definitely succeeded. That seems to be the goal again, and that seems to be what's happening when you look at this. So spotting a bot account is interesting, and they get into it a little bit here. They talk about their methodology. They mention some tells. And some of these are very easy to pick up if you use a computer to collect tweets. You can analyze massive groups of tweets together, and you can look for patterns. And anytime you find certain patterns, you have a pretty good theory that there's a bot. I don't have a analysis workflow set up for that specifically, but I've started working on one, and I'm not a data scientist, but these things are relatively easy to set up. But these mention some of the things you can look for, like not just subtle typos. She mentions looking for typos, but humans make typos all the time, right? That's not necessarily that bad. But if you see the same typo in multiple versions of the same statements in different tweeters accounts, that's probably a network of bots that are working together. Of course, you also have to have a whole bunch of these to even be able to see that. Other things like tweeting much faster than a human could actually type. That's another, if there's a series if they send out 10 tweets in a minute, that's sort of remotely possible for a human, but if they do that for 20 hours straight, that's impossible. And so that's something that I think would indicate strongly that this is a bot. The thing is, those kinds of things, programmers know that those are tells for bots. Like those are going to give away your identity as a bot. So it's pretty easy to program in time delays or other things to make it tweet in a more human-like pattern. And so it's an interesting kind of arms race as people try to make bots that appear to act more human-like. As I mentioned last week in talking about creative coding, I make Twitter bots. I do that for fun and for arts. I don't ever try to make them, and this is pretty important to me. When I make them, I never try to trick somebody into thinking this is a real human account. Lots of things about my bot accounts are very obviously bot accounts. So this is one, for example, Crooked Cosmos. And I say, this in the description, this is a bot. Like I'm saying very clearly, this is a bot. And no one seems to be confused by that. Like I don't have people trying to react to it and say like, hey, how'd you make that? Or whatever. If people have questions about the bot, they talk to me about it. And so I put my name there. I'm not trying to be sneaky about it. But the bot part of this, the setting up an account that will tweet automatically, is really easy, and that's partly the reason that Twitter bots, in a more destructive sense, have proliferated. So let me show you what I've set up so far. I'm just kind of curious about this, and you might find this useful for your own research as well. So there's this product called Tags, and I'll show you the Tags website. A guy named Martin Hoxie developed this tool. I actually met him last summer. Nice guy. So this is a tool I've been using for years. This is a tool that uses a Google spreadsheet to collect and archive tweets based on a search query or some other things. and you can get it yourself. You go get tags, and 6.1 is what I've been using. I think 6.0 does still work, but there's a explanation here. The only thing that's and really just kind of following the steps that it outlines is pretty straightforward. The only thing that is not straightforward is that sometimes this GIF here is showing you one of the things that sometimes happens. Because this is a third-party application, it wasn't developed by Google, and Google requires a lot of steps to get an account and an app verified. Martin Hoxie hasn't been able to complete those steps. I actually have tried it as well, and I've not been able to get that completed myself. So it's going to show up with this warning if you do try to use it. It says, this app isn't verified, back to safety, but you have to click advanced, and then you can proceed. So that's something that you might have to do if you do choose to use this. But I do recommend it. I like it a lot. So this is what it looks like. And this is a search query I set up for COVID-19 and 5G. So in group 2, if that's the topic you're going to be looking at, you might find this archive useful, or you might want to set one up yourself. I was actually surprised that I only captured about 3,000 tweets in the last week using this search query. So I'm wondering if maybe my search, like maybe 2-letter searches don't actually count in Twitter search, and I'm not sure. Like, this is basically sending all this query stuff into Twitter's API, so I'm not sure how Twitter perhaps will work with that. But basically, you have to do a couple steps here: set up Twitter access, and then you can do a couple actions with this special tags menu. Run now will actually go ahead and go out to Twitter and try to grab some tweets, and then once you've successfully run it once, then you can set it up to. Yeah, looks like it got a little bit more. You can have it. This menu item says update archive every hour, and then it'll just update automatically every hour. I've already set mine to do that, so now it says stop updating archive every hour. But that's how that works. And then you get them over here in this archive tab. And this you also can use the Tags Explorer. I'm not going to click on that because it uses my GPU and it will probably crash the stream, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, if you want to see who's tweeting about it, this is kind of the data view of what a tweet looks like. You have an ID string for the tweet, who it's from, the content of it, when they created it, expressed a couple different ways. Sometimes users shared geographic coordinates, but not usually, so you don't usually see that there. But if here's the user's ID string, follower count. These are all the things that you can learn just automatically, computationally, about any tweet, and this is just those that happen to be here. So you can kind of look through this and see that the people tweeting on this hashtag, in terms of their follower count, that's kind of a way to figure out basically how popular they are. And these are all in the low thousands at the most, and most have fewer than that. So an account with like 12 followers that's been created yesterday and it tweets 300 times that day, those are things that are very obviously bots. But here's a very popular one, yeah. When you look at the tweet content, when you search like this, sometimes you'll see it. Sometimes it'll be people saying, hey, 5G causes coronavirus. Or it might be people saying, hey, can you believe people actually think 5G causes coronavirus? So this kind of search doesn't capture that kind of context. You as a person have to look at that and interpret it in many cases. But what the researchers here were saying is that they've figured out, using AI basically, they've made some effort at letting the computer determine context and figure out those kinds of differences. And within that, they've come up with, I think, a pretty believable number that, as they say, where does it say? Yeah, about 45% are from accounts that seem more like bots than humans. It does seem like a lot, but it also, the rest are people, right? That still seems like it's still an issue. Like, it's still a people problem and not a bot problem, and also not a manufactured topic. Like, it's something that these bots are perhaps amplifying or egging on, but it's not that they are the only ones doing it. I think that number 45% is probably a little higher than you would find for any given topic. So I think there is, and that's just a hunch. I don't have any data for that, but my hunch is that something like 30% of accounts on Twitter are bots. But that's just a hunch. So I would have to do more. I'd be interested to see kind of the null example of this. Like, what would it look like if you looked at hashtag baseball or something, like something more generic or less political? Would you find the same distribution of human to bot, the same ratio from human to bot, using the same the same heuristic that they have applied here. So that'd be interesting to do. I've started doing this a little bit with this data, but I don't have anything to show you yet. But if I put it together, I will let you know. Okay, so let's see. By the way, if you have any thoughts about this stuff, like these news topics here, I'm not going to be like requiring daily blog posts, but if you have ideas and you have something you want to say about it, that's what a blog is for, and that's a great use for your blog. I mean, I'm requiring several specific blog posts, but it's your space and it's your platform. So if you have thoughts, I think that's a great use. I mean, your blogging will be much more interesting and productive to you if it's something that you do when you have something to say, and not something that you do when I told you to say something, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, there's this and a couple other things that you may have thoughts about. Any of these stories or things that are related, any insights that you've come across. So yeah, I'll see those as I see your content on your blog. So I'd be interested perhaps in responding if you have anything to say there. Of course, we can also discuss things in Slack if you'd rather have a more informal way of sharing your thoughts. Okay, so let's take a look at some other things as we build our toolkit for working with web literacy. So this is, let's go into the web literacy textbook. Actually, let me go ahead and I want to clear my tabs because I've got too much up here. And I can't keep things straight sometimes. So let's take a look at web literacy. And there are a couple of, where is it? Oh, there it is. Let me kind of go through some of the main ideas here, and this isn't the page I wanted to look at, but let's start at the beginning and kind of go through some of the main ideas, and then get into a couple of the exercises. So we're going to try to do this live, or I'm going to show you how to work through it right now. I encourage you to try it now, but you can also do it later. That's the great thing about Slack. So let's get into some things. So remember the 4 moves, and these are the things that this book is going to keep coming back to. It's the way the book is structured, and it's the things that I'm going to keep talking about, and that you hopefully will be using when you write your articles, and also when you write your reflection. You'll be able to say, here's how I used going upstream to help me get to the answer that I eventually came across here. So let's look at this. So first thing that we want to do when we're given a claim is check for previous work, and that could be literally just Googling it. Now remember, I did show you yesterday using the Brave browser and taking some other steps perhaps might be a good idea to just sort of inoculate your browser at least. This is also something that you should think about for yourself as you work through this. Like think about the fact that these claims, as I said, these are all real claims. I mean, people are out there saying these things. And sometimes conspiracy thinking can be very seductive. It's not an accident that it's popular. It's not an accident that people latch onto it. So be really careful out there, by the way, while you're checking for previous work. Keep in mind, have a skeptical eye with everything that you read, and put it to the same kind of rigor that you would as a researcher, especially when you're engaged in this particular research. Anyway, so checking for previous work. There are established websites like PolitiFact and Snopes and even Wikipedia that can be a good way to get some clarity about something. Wikipedia, as you probably know, can be edited by anybody, but a well-written Wikipedia article has been written by everybody to get to the bottom of something, or not really to get to the bottom in terms of research, but to state what is the established consensus about something and cite sources that explain that. And that often is a good way of doing fact-checking. The other things here, going upstream, going upstream does sometimes take a few specialized techniques, and we'll look at one of those today. Likewise, reading laterally can as well, and then circling back is just kind of doing the same things over again. The other thing here, though, and this is harder to this doesn't kind of drill down into a specific technique, but it's a good thing to keep in mind always. And like I said, this is kind of like your sort of fact inoculation. I mean, we're trying to build a fact-checking habit, and we do have to think about checking our emotions. And this is kind of counterintuitive because many of these things that we're going to read here are fairly emotionally charged. I think that's why they're so seductive. Checking your emotions, and again, this is kind of counterintuitive. It means not following your gut instinct. So when we see these things, when you saw the claims that I listed in the assignment, you probably had an immediate reaction to those and thought, oh, this is ridiculous. Or, hey, maybe there's something here. You had some kind of a gut feeling about these. That's what we're trying to work against, because that gut feeling is what a fake news perpetrator is counting on. They're counting on you to think, oh yeah, Bill Gates is kind of a bad guy. Maybe he is trying to reprogram our DNA. They're trying to count on your belief that you already may have about Bill Gates to take you a step further into this other belief. And so we really have to watch our feelings on these. I've been critical of Bill Gates. I think he's someone who does a lot of good for the world probably with his money, but also really made some decisions early on in the history of computing and the company Microsoft that I think were bad decisions, but or have harmed humanity. But ultimately, like I can look at different things that he's done individually. The point is, we have to resist that kind of thinking. And this is an example. KKK, Nazis, very emotionally charged, very painful ideas, and so this is an example, and this is a good one to start with, of how emotions can be used as kind of jet fuel for virality. That they can really, like when people are emotionally engaged with something, they're more likely to share it. And emotional and negative emotions are even more viral, I guess. They can send things even faster. So that's something that we have to watch for. But let's move on. Okay, so checking for previous work is important. But this is a technique, and this is where we can actually start looking at some specific things you can do. You notice that this is a screenshot of Duckduckgo, and what Duckduckgo does, as I told you the other day, it's a way to have a more private and more secured browsing experience. This one, I set that up in my browser, my Brave browser, to be that way. So let me switch over to that browser actually, and show you some things there. Did I? Oh, I closed my browser. Hang on. I closed my Brave browser. I'm not a fan of the name, by the way. I don't like the name Brave. I'm not sure why. It just kind of seems awkward. Okay, so is this Brave? This is. But I actually wanted to. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this to the fully Tor version. So I'm going to switch my window capture here. I'm doing a little OBS work here behind the scenes. Where? No. There it is. Okay. All right. Let me slide this into view and put myself back on top. Ah. There I am. Okay, sorry about that. A little shuffling, but this is Tor, and I'm going to go ahead and use Tor for the next part of this research. So this is going to let me, do some searching, and the big thing that I wanted to show you is the site queries. So search engines have all these functions that a lot of people don't realize are there, things that they can do based on a couple of specialized search parameters and search things you can add there. And it's actually really useful sometimes, not just for fact checking or searching for previous work, but just for finding things. Like I often can't find something on our website at umw.edu, so I'll just do site.umw.edu in order, because like the search on the website sometimes is slow, or you have to load the website first. But this is a way to do it. So you do site : and then the domain that you want to search on, and then the search phrase that you want to search for. So this is useful. You can also exclude sites this way, but we'll look at that when we read laterally. So let's do something like COVID-19 5G. So you can see that this is a bunch of things. We've seen actually two different versions of these. So there's people talking about how this is true, and some people talking about how this is a conspiracy. And so it would take us a while to sort through all that. But let's kind of look at a few very specific ways that we can that we can find out if someone's already done this work. So let's look at Snopes.com. Let's look at PolitiFact, and I might as well just do Wikipedia also. So by adding these parameters here, these are only going to show results that occur on these, and in fact, it's not showing any. That's interesting. let's simplify it here. Sometimes adding too much can be too specific. Okay, interesting. So there's actually a few different things about 5G on Snopes.com, but you notice all these results here are from Snopes. So Snopes already has its own way of doing this, but let's add a couple more. Let's expand this a bit. Let's add PolitiFact back in here. I wonder if it's trying to make it appear on all of these things instead of, let me just try a Boolean here. Yeah, okay, so that seems like what I need to do. So now this is showing up on PolitiFact or Snopes.com. I don't think you have to add the or on Google, but it looks like I needed to on Duckduckgo. But yeah, here we are. So we've got now just results on PolitiFact and Snopes, and some of these are unrelated, but they might be part of the picture that you try to build as you fill out your story. Now, if you are working on this question, the 5G coronavirus connection, just because it's on Snopes doesn't mean your work is over. Doesn't mean that we just have to automatically accept what Snopes says, but we should look at it and consider if it answers our question or not. It might not, or it might answer it in some kind of ambiguous way or ambivalent way. So we need to keep looking. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean our work is over, but it might. So that's something to start with. Okay, so the other bits of advice. So that was checking for prior work in the web literacy textbook, and I'm going to go ahead and put that over here in this browser too, so that I can look at it just in tabs. Just make sure I still have the right. Yes, I am still displaying the same thing. And this is, as you see, the Tor browser. I'm using the Tor window here, and the Tor browser does slow down your browsing a bit. So that's a trade-off. If privacy is not super important to you, or this level of privacy, then it's reasonable not to use it. I'm not in the habit of using it all the time myself, so it's certainly something to consider. But okay, so let's move on. So these are some fact-checking websites we can look at, factcheck.org, and then there's different ones. In fact, if you go to Google News lately, there's also usually a fact-checking widget on that homepage. Let's see. Yeah, this is the fact-checking thing. So it lists several others, mostly the same ones, but sometimes special reports or other things. I think this must be human curated because it usually is pretty relevant. Okay, so let's take a look going forward. Again, there's some fact-checking things that are more specific. There's several that have popped up just around coronavirus, actually. All right, so a good statement about Wikipedia. So this is the first step here, going upstream. And going upstream means going back to the original source. And that's why this is the first major section of your article, figuring out where something comes from. And once we figure out where something comes from, we can often make decisions about it. So if there's a particular source that we know to be reputable, and that's the source for this information, then we can probably rely on it. And we'll talk about how to rely on things. But if it's there for some other reason, then we need to be a little bit more cautious about it. And sponsored content is one pretty easy example in terms of intention that we can recognize as being when if we trace a claim upstream and we get to the fact that it's an ad or that it supports someone's business, that's certainly a case where we should expose it as fake news, or we should debunk it. And I think it's a good exercise here to try to identify sponsored content. Just in terms of time, I don't know if it makes sense to go through this all the way, but I'll start this off and show you what I mean. So sponsored content is when we're looking at something that in some ways pretends to be content. So something that is not just an ad, but something that pretends to be the thing we're looking for, or like the content of the website. Then if it's a news website, it's something that pretends to be news. And the level of that pretension could be it could be typographical. It could just be the same font. It could be something that looks like a headline, but it actually is an ad. A lot of times you will see very small disclosures that something is an ad, but it's easy to miss that. It's easy to go past that. And this is an example where I think many of us think of ourselves as pretty savvy web browsers, but sometimes these kinds of things slip by us, and it's worthwhile to spend a little time practicing looking for these things. So let me, I got too many tabs, but let me go back to take a look at Firefox again. So this is, because this is back where I have my notes for today. So just looking at how ads proliferate on the web is a good way to start. I showed you uBlock Origin the other day. It's a good ad blocker that I have running. So I just took this morning I took a screenshot of fredexpert.com, the website for the freelance star. The one on the left, I mean, I ask if you can tell which is which, but I think you probably can tell that the one on the left is the homepage of the freelance star without ad blocker. So this is me allowing all the ads to come through. It's kind of a small, it said something about error, that's weird, but it's kind of a small screenshot, unfortunately. I thought I could click on that to make it the full size, but hopefully you can see that it's actually, it's all ads. Like there's nothing else. I just see my video disappeared there, yeah. Sorry about that. So it's all ads. Like you literally can't read any of the headlines. So then one on the right is what it looks like with the ad blocker running and blocking these ads. It's just really shocking how many ads there are. And I get that they're really trying to, I mean, they're struggling. I mean, they financially, like they need income. I get that, you know, but there's ways to do it that are less disruptive, I think. In any case, that's what they've done. Another example that you've seen possibly are something is called like dark design patterns, where something tricks you like this. Like this is just a software download page. And this is the one on the bottom, as my label here very clearly points to. That's the correct download link, but this other ad pops up with a giant green download button on it. So, you know, if you're not paying attention, you might accidentally click on that download button, and then you're actually looking at this Mac Keeper. You're looking at some other software that you didn't intend to look at. So it's a way that ads can sneak past you. So let's take a look at some sponsored content. So I've got a Slack channel that I created for this exercise, and I'd like for you to use it. It's called Discuss Sponsored. I'm going to go and switch to it because no one's using it yet. And here's what I'd like for you to do. So this is an activity described in the Web Literacy textbook right here, but I've given you a slightly different version of this. It's a little bit more, a little simpler, I think. These are 6 websites, 6 news sources, and what you should do is look at these, and without looking at their website, actually, before you look at their website, off the top of your head, which of these do you think will have the most sponsored content? Like we just saw this thing and see hopefully some of the problems with it. So which of these websites do you think would have the most? Rank them and then share them in here in this channel. I'm going to add a couple of things here to this channel while I'm talking. You're welcome to jump in on this as I'm doing this if you'd like to. For the detect here's how it works. First, post your ranked list of news. Post your ranking of these news sources in terms of how much each will rely on sponsored content. Sorry, my wording feels a little bit muddled, but let me just give you a starting point, and hopefully that will demonstrate what to do. So this is the list. I mean, I've done this exercise, so actually I kind of know the answer already, so I'm not going to rank them, but let's say this is my ranking. And actually I should make this not a bulleted list, but a numbered list. So let me see if I can, if Slack will let me just switch that. Yes, it will. Great, thanks. Thanks, Slack. So this is my ranking. So now what you should do is post your ranking, but do it off the top of your head. If you've not heard of some of these, that's okay. Just guess and sort of put them around the other ones that you do have some idea about. And then once then you should next go to that actual site. So let's go to CNN because I have listed that as potentially my the most sponsored content. So let me show you how to spot it on a website. This is CNN.com. I do have an ad blocker here, so perhaps I should. Well, I don't know. I don't want to. All the ads are being blocked. Okay, so let me try this in a a browser without ad block on, just to kind of have a better look at this in terms of what we're seeing. Okay, so this is without ad blocker. So let me see if I can find some sponsored content. So that's an ad. This is HBO Max. That doesn't really count. So let's see if we can find something else. Also ads. Also ads. And ads aren't, I mean, ads are sponsored, obviously, but they aren't necessarily sponsored content. So let me see. What is this? Oh, weird. Stuff is weird. Here we go. Here's some. It literally labels itself paid content. So I'm up to 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, right? Those are, so how to order DoorDash without paying DoorDash prices, blah, blah, blah. Sure, okay. You might say that these are too. Here's some more paid partner content. And actually, you know, interestingly, like where does it stop? So we've got, we had 4 up there before, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're up to this one, 1, 2, 3. But each one of these blocks has a different story. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Unless these are the same link as the image, but they probably are not. So 1, 2, so it's, yeah, we're up to like 25, I think, something like that. And then, yeah, we can keep going. But this is, actually, this does stop. Some of these news sites you'll find have infinite scrolls, so at some point you just have to decide, okay, I'm done scrolling. But this one does actually stop, so that's good. So up to 25 or so, pretty high. You know, make your guess. And then once you actually have your ranking, reply to yourself with a thread, and this will hide your reply from everyone else. That's the idea. I don't want you all to reveal your actual ranking until you've had a chance to try your initial ranking first. So you can do that if you can see. Can you see yeah, so we see where I'm clicking on, I'm hovering over my ranked thing, and I can click on this start a thread icon, and this lets me reply to myself. Here's my actual ranking now that I've looked, and then, you know, provide your actual ranking. So I mean, that's something I would have to go through these all and do, and these will change. I mean, these sites are different, but you know, make sure first of all you don't have an ad blocker running. I mean, I kind of just leave one browser at a time, sort of unprotected, so I can do these kinds of things. But you know, do that, and then see what you actually find, like see what actually turns out to be the case. Because it, you know, again, we're trying to train ourselves not to trust our instincts, but to actually look at things. So this is hopefully a pretty good exercise in doing that. Okay, so I'm realizing I don't want to go too much longer. So let me, oh, somebody replied to me. Oh, Josh did. So Josh, put this in the, don't reply to my thread, but do this in just like the main part of the channel. And then reply in your own thread to yourself, if that makes sense. Yeah, we're trying to use Slack a little bit sneakily here. Okay, so the next exercise, and I'll just maybe describe this and then kind of get it started and then wrap up the stream. This is one I'd hope to work a little bit more on, but going upstream can, you know, there's a couple different things we can do. And photos are a pretty ripe medium for exploiting fake news because we can often share, I mean, it's a good way to spread fake news, I think, because they can be very compelling. Images can be very, you know, emotionally charged. They can really convince you that something is the case. That is despite the fact that I think we all know intellectually that photos can be manipulated very easily and very convincingly. So we have, again, to kind of check our instinct. Our instinct is to trust photos, even if we are well versed in Photoshop. So let's take a look at something like this. So this is an example, and he goes through this particular example and shows you how to do this particular reverse image search. This is something that everyone should know how to do. I mean, it's useful for fake news context, but just for anything. If you want to know about an image, you can learn a lot often by doing a reverse image search to find out if it already exists on the web. This is a really powerful tool and really important. So let's take a look. If this is the image that we're interested in, we need to, and this, I mean, he goes through this process here, but we can do it straight from this. So let's copy the image address, and that's going to be the URL that it comes from. I just realized I'm not showing you the right browser anymore. So let me, this is a problem with all these browsers. There I am. Nope. What browser am I in? Oh, I'm back in Brave. Yeah, okay. There I am. Okay, sorry about that. But this is the finding images exercise. So chapter 14. Or page 14. Let's copy the image address. So this is the URL where this particular image is hosted. And so if you copy this in its own tab, you'll see this image by itself. Notice that this ends in .jpeg. So that's how I know that this is the image itself and not a web page that includes the image, and that's important. So copying that, keeping that on my clipboard. Let's go to Google Images and search for it. So you can click on this image here, the image of a camera, and then paste the image here. I just noticed Google is in French for me because I'm using the Tor browser, which anonymizes my IP address, and currently, apparently I am using an IP address from France, so that's why it's giving me its content in French. It also suspects that I am a bot, so let's see if I can convince it that I am not a bot. There might be a crosswalk back there by that red light, but I can't see it, so hopefully, oh man, okay. Seriously? I promise I'm not a bot. Man, it's really making me work for this. Okay, I guess it worked. Okay, so this is, I should be able to change my, how do I change the language? I don't know French, so I can't read this, but what does this say? I don't know what this says, but this is the image in question, and we can actually see that it's done a couple of things. First of all, Google's AI just tried to figure out what is this an image of, and it seems to have come up with a possible caption for this image that a barred owl attacks humans. So, okay, great. How do I, there's gotta be a way to switch the language on here. I can't see it, but what you can see is that this actually does show up in a lot of different pages. One of the things that you'll find with the images that are mentioned in the textbook is that if you do reverse image search with them, you will find the textbook, and also you will find people talking about using the textbook. So it's something that it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But let's look at the screenshots here because they actually show this in English. Basically, what we're trying to figure out is, does this image actually show a National Geographic photographer being attacked by this bird? Right, so we could ask ourselves, is this actually an image, or was it photoshopped? And it does seem to be a real image based on the way people are talking about it. But was it a National Geographic photographer? Well, we'd have to do a little bit more work for that. So yeah, in fact, we can confirm a bit or learn a lot more about the context by finding other photos of the same event, the same attack here from a different angle. So it gives us more information or more confirmation that this really happened, and also that people talked about it. Okay, so there's lots of more activities in here, and I recommend strongly you work your way through these. But let's take a couple more looks at these. This one is an interesting one because you will find that it is pretty easy to debunk, and in fact, people have debunked it. Let me go back to my real Firefox so I can actually read what Google Images tells me when I search for it. So let me. Here, yeah, so this is now where we can start finding out, is this actually a National Geographic, a group of National Geographic photographers being chased by a bear. We can find out that this is actually fake. For example, here's an example of this image being used on Gizmodo and with the big label fake. I've noticed Snopes does this too. Whenever they debunk an image, they will actually share the image in their post with a watermark like this to make sure that no one can reshare it from their site and continue to be confused. But that's definitely fake, and you can look at why. I mean, there's actually, you can break down pretty good analysis of what's going on here. But also just like the image is funny, like it's a comedic image, and so I think that's partly how you can tell that this is probably fake. Like it looks posed. Like it looks like even if there was a bear there, which I doubt, and it would be easy to Photoshop the bear in place there, these guys look like they're running, towards the camera because they're trying to make a funny post. Okay, so this one is a lot harder. And what I'd like for you to do, I will start threads in the live stream chat channel with these images specifically, and maybe a couple more. And on each of those threads, I'd like for you to reply in a thread, to determine or to decide if you think this is true or not. So let's see, how do I? Maybe I can just. Let me just do it this way. So let me go into the live stream chat channel. So one of the exercises today is to trace viral photos upstream. I'm going to post them below, and I'd like for you to reply, use the threaded reply to each once you think you found it. Found its source. I'll say it that way. So let's do it this way. Swan song. Maybe I will just upload it here. That way, this will organize the threads a little bit more. So I'm going to actually just upload the image directly. How do I do this? They've changed the way they do this thing. Okay. Is this a real or fake image? If it's real, who is this and what is his nationality? Okay, so again, here's this one, and so am I showing it? Yeah. So once you do this technique, try to reverse image search it, and then figure out what you can about its origins, and then share your thoughts here. So click on the start a thread button or reply to the thread with your theory about where this comes from. So let me just show you just a couple of things here just to make sure you see how to do it. Let me copy the image location again on this. I'll use the bear image because there's one more aspect of the search that I thought would be useful to demonstrate. Even if your search, your claim that you're researching doesn't have to do with images, this is a useful thing to know about, which is that you can filter these things by date. So this is showing you pages that include this image, and as you can see, it's a lot of different versions of this textbook that have been used in different places. It's open access, so people have made different versions of it. But we can also do a few things to search. We can customize the range of our results. So let's find out where this was created. So if the question is this fake or not, we've already answered that, but we haven't. If the question is who made this image and why, then we've got a lot more work to do. So let's go back to, let's search the range here. Actually, let's do 2. Anytime before, I'm just clicking on October 1st, 2017. Okay, so it looks like, yeah, in fact, this textbook was published in 2017, so this makes sense. But you can see here it's also been used in Imager and the textbook. So it somehow, it was around as far as we know at this point by October 2017. So let's go back, I don't know why I picked October, but let's go back to 2015 and see if it predates that. It does. It seems like it existed in 2015 and actually 2014 on Twitter. So let's take a look at this example of it. This is a link to a tweet from someone named Jess Davenport. So let's see. National Geographic photographers are metal AF. And so, okay, these are 2 images we've also seen, but this one is the one we're interested in now. This was posted in, I guess, 2015, but this person isn't necessarily claiming that they are the person who created this. The tattooed, I know that person. Anyway, I met him with Kevin, I think. This is kind of random. But we still haven't got to the bottom of when this was created. Let's see. This one might exist as early as 2013. So let's see if we can go back even further. I guess it's worth noting that these dates can be spoofed. So something might be posted and then it might tell Google that this page is from 2001, but in fact it's not. But things like Twitter, that's reliable if something was tweeted on a particular day. Okay, interesting. So this has gone back to, okay, so these are both on June, these were both posted on June 15th, 2007. And this is interesting because if you look at it, this is on a Russian domain name, so it's dompelican.ru, but the text here is in German. So that's kind of interesting. Also, though, this looks like I mean, I know a little bit of German, but this to me looks totally unrelated to National Geographic photographers and bears. So how did this image get associated with it? Whoa, there it is. What's happening here? I don't know. This is kind of bizarre. But anyway, this is the kind of thing you can do with the search. I wanted to show you that you can go back in time and search results because that's one of the things you'll need to do when you try to trace the origin of something. So I'll post threads for the other ones, or I'll post them also in that channel, and I'd like for you to try to do your best to debunk them or get back to the origins of those claims. I will tell you that the Swan one is harder than you might think it is. After you might get started, you might think you've got an answer, but I think it's probably wrong, the first answer that you get. Okay, so let me wrap it up. I just want to add one final thought. It's something to think about, and then that'll be it for today. So let me see where should I put this? You know what? I'm just going to say it. There's a thought. I'll send in a message in Slack, but just an open question to think about, and then we'll maybe find a way to talk about or respond to it. Or I'll invite you to respond to it over Slack. The question is truth. I mean, we're at this stage with web literacy where we're trying to figure out whether or not certain claims are true or not. We already have a hunch probably, but we need to figure out how do we prove that these things are true. In order to know that something's true, we need to understand what truth is, or we need to have at least a working idea of what truth is. So let me pose a question, and these are all factual claims that we're looking at here. So my question to you is, what is a fact, and when do we know it's true? That's a two-part question, and I've intentionally put that way. So let me say it again, and then just invite you to think about it. We can talk more tomorrow. What is a fact, and when is it true? So think about that. If you have thoughts, you can share them in Slack, or maybe even write a blog, but we'll talk about it some more tomorrow. Because we need to make sure we know what facts are before we say something is a fact or is not true or is true. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up. I'll be posting a few things now in Slack. Group 3, I think we need to make sure you get a topic soon, so I will be reaching out to you all to confirm that. I think group 2, it sounds like you settled on one. Everyone else, you've got yours, so go ahead, and it should be fun. Start working on your articles. Okay, see you tomorrow.